Let's talk more about plugins. You learned last week that a plugin is some software application that actually can process audio or synthesize audio. They're called plugins because they're hosted within a host software application. In our cases, a digital audio workstation, specifically Reaper. They plug into the other software program. Now, Reaper, of course, is an incredible program with all kinds of functionality and capability. We won't even begin to touch the surface of everything that it can do in the course of this semester. So it seems a little crazy that I'd want you to start thinking about plugins and other things that we could add on to Reaper, but there's some specific goals I have for you this semester that unfortunately aren't baked into the default version of Reaper. So what I want us to talk about today is how we can install our own plugins that Reaper can use. In this case, I want to go get a specific tone generator and a couple delay plugins. This is one of the great things about plugins is that there are thousands and thousands of plugins out there that you can add on to different DAWs. There are proprietary paid for plugins by the likes of Waves, McDSP, Ozone. And there's also a whole slew of freeware and open source plugins that you can add on to your systems that do some really amazing and creatively experimental things. A plugin like a video file or an audio file or a Word document even has different types of extensions and architectures that they're built around. And certain DAWs work with certain types of plugin architectures. The ones we are particularly interested in, and the ones that can be hosted in Reaper, are VST. And VST is a type of plugin that was developed by Steinberg for their DAW Cubase and is been transitioned to a GPL license. So developers can develop VST plugins without high overhead costs, unlike some of the proprietary plugin formats that Avid has created. There are, of course, compromises and trade-offs to different types of plugin architectures, and there are reasons why certain DAW companies would want to use certain architectures and not others. We can dig way deeper into that later in life, but right now we're just interested in what can we do inside of Reaper. So VSTs are what we want to use, and we're going to have to place them where we want to put them. What I mean by that is a lot of the open source and free plugins don't have fancy installers and are fairly bare bones applications, as you might suspect for someone who is developing something and not asking you to pay them for it. This means that you need to manually install it onto your computer. It's not a hard process, but it does take a couple steps. So we're going to go over that next. So let's come over here to Soka Labs. Hold on a second. Great. So Soka Labs develops some really interesting plugins, and I would actually encourage you to download and install all of these. You might as well, since we're doing this right now, and you can pick the download for your individual operating system. But if you just want to install the one that we're interested in at the moment, it's the tone generator plugin. So you could click on that and again, download the version that is appropriate or matches your operating system. Now we're going to come over to Reaper. And if we open up preferences in Reaper and we're going to navigate down to the VST tab under the plugins area, there's this button here that says edit. And this is essentially going to show us a list of the directories on our computer where Reaper is looking for VST plugins. Now, one way you could handle this is you could add a specific folder on your computer where you're storing plugins yourself, and then Reaper will manage and keep track of that folder. I don't think that's great practice because if you have other sound programs that also can host plugins, you would need to make sure that you manually add then that personalized plugin folder to each of these DAWs. Instead, we want to install our VST plugin into a directory that is an expected VST directory. So again, if we click edit, it shows us there are these four directories where it's looking for plugins. And notice the first one, library audio plugins VST, and the second one, library audio plugins VST3. So I mentioned already that there's numerous plugin architectures. And even within VST land, there's two predominant architectures, the newer VST3 and the older VST. The plugin we downloaded, we want to check and see what it is so that we know where we want to store it. So right here, Tone Generator, I've downloaded it a couple times while testing for this video. We see that we've got two files in here, a VST and a dot component. Now, I'm also just going to download the Windows one, even though I can't do anything with it, of course. And you're going to notice it is a DLL file, and it comes in two flavors, 64-bit and 32-bit. So you'll want to do the same thing over in Reaper. Now that we know what our plugin is, we could hit edit and see where plugins are being looked at by Reaper. In our case, we know this is a VST plugin. So we're going to want to, and not a VST3 plugin, which is a VST3.VST3 extension. So we're going to want to open this directory, library audio plugins VST. The other thing I just want to mention really quickly, at least for Mac, is that you'll notice there's some similarities. There's also this users music, library audio plugins VST. This top one right here is a global level directory where the application would be available to all users on your machine. This third one is a user-specific library directory where the application would only be available to you. So it depends on how you're wanting to set up your computer as to which of these you're going to install them. I'm going to install my VST plugin into the library audio plugins VST or that global directory. So I'm going to come over to Finder again, and I've got this Finder window, and I'm going to go. I could navigate there. There's some weird things about Mac where they hide the library directory from you because they're afraid that users who don't know what they're doing could destroy their computers, and they're not entirely wrong. You're not going to destroy your computer, but just know they make it a little bit hard. So what we're going to do, if you press the Option key, it pulls up that user library directory, but we want to go to that global one, and I think the easiest way to do that is to hit the Go to Folders option here. And then we're going to type in library with a preceding / library audio. Audio plugins, and then it's going to find it. And I'm going to hit go at this point. And we're going to notice there's a whole bunch of directories in here. One of them is components. And if we come into that, we'll see that we have .component files, which matches with one of the file types we have in our Tone Generator directory. Then we also have a number of others, and then VST and VST3. And as I mentioned already, we have a VST plugin, not a VST3 plugin. So we're going to open the VST directory, and I'm going to simply drag and drop it into this VST directory. Now, again, Mac is a secure operating system, so it wants me to authenticate that I know what I'm doing and that this is not some sort of malicious attack because we are touching a directory at the top level of our machine. So I'm going to say, yes, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to authenticate. And it's going to move it in there. And then you don't see this right now, but I'm having to enter my password on my other screen. So I did have to authenticate that. And now if we look by date modified, tonegenerator.vst has been moved in. And I'm going to do the same thing for the other one. I'm just going to move over this tonegenerator.component. And I'm going to enter my password again. Great. Now, in Reaper, it doesn't see these yet because we would either need to restart it or we need to tell it to rescan. So I'm going to actually say rescan, and notice it says scan all VST directories for any added or updated plugins at the bottom of the window here. So I'm going to click rescan, and then I'm going to hit OK. And here now, when we click to add an effect, if I type in tone, and I click all, and I type in tone, I have this new tone generator effect. I can click on it, and it opens up. And we'll get into what we can do with this thing in a little bit. But that's how you add it. So there's a number of other plugins, another set that you're going to add manually like this, and then a final set of plugins that are, there's 3 free ones, but by a larger company that develops paid for plugins. And so theirs come with an installer application that's going to do this for you manually and automatically make your life a little bit easier. Great.